you're a very well-known chef. Talk to us about your relationship with your dad and what he thought of it all.
Well, he was in finance. He was sort of pushing me to study hard.
Yes.
I got accepted into law and commerce, and then I told him I was going to be a chef. And he even tried to tell me that people that made lots of money got pretty wives. I literally packed a bag and moved to London with no money in my pocket. I slept on someone's couch for the first 6 months of living there because I couldn't afford an apartment. If you have the belief this is going to happen, then it can.
I heard this mindset coach once say, what is the worst thing that you can do to your kids? And he said, not follow your dream.
We used to work from 9 in the morning till midnight.
How did you survive that? Is there like a hierarchy within the kitchen? Do you sometimes find bullying?
Has the world become too soft? That's what we're asking.
Yeah. Were you friends with Jock?
Yes. Yeah,
Was that a big surprise to you when he passed away?
It was. Yeah, it was. It really was. The conversation I had with him the last time I saw him, he was actually talking about moving to Italy.
Do you find that, because it's very high pressure, that mental health is a big thing? Curtis Stone, welcome to a Life of Greatness podcast.
Thanks so much.
So you actually grew up in Melbourne.
I did.
From what I found out, you went to Essendon Grammar.
Yep.
And you're at East Keilor.
That's right.
How was that?
East Keilor?
Oh, growing up in Melbourne, the younger years.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a great childhood. It was fun. I was actually at my childhood footy club last night.
Oh, yeah.
The East Keilor Footy Club. Went to see my sister, who's now the president of the club. It's kind of funny because I go back there.
Yeah.
And I played all my junior footy there. And all the guys that I played with, their dads used to stand around the ground. And now the guys I played with stand where their dads used to stand watching their kids. And it's like life feels very consistent, very safe. And I love that about Melbourne.
Yeah. Do you miss it much? Because when did you move to the US?
I moved there 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do miss it. I miss it a lot. But I'm lucky because I get to come back maybe half a dozen times a year.
Yeah.
And I'm back for a week to 2 weeks each trip. So it feels like I have a foot in both camps, if you will, you know.
6 times a year is a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I get back here for work.
Yeah.
So that the travel doesn't feel too much, you know. It feels like I'm just working, and when I'm back here, I of course get to see my friends and family, and that's nice.
And I wonder, obviously, you're a very well-known chef, and I find it interesting when I've talked to people in this field before, because I wonder like where that came from. And cooking is such a beautiful thing, and in a lot of families, it comes from the female doing it.
Right.
How did you learn to cook, and where did the love come from?
I learned the passion of food. Well, I think you're kind of born with your likes and dislikes, and some of them have more than others. And I've sort of grown to learn. I've got a pretty big palate, right? And people don't talk about their palates very much, but it's a bit like a voice. Yeah. Everyone has a voice. Some people know how to use it really well, and some people have no idea. I have no idea how to use my voice. I'm a terrible singer. Yeah. But my wife can sing like an angel. So thank God my kids inherited hers and not mine. But when it comes to your palate, I do think that it's something that you're sort of born with or not. And I've always loved food and been obsessed with how things taste. And
really?
Yeah, my first food memory was sitting on a kitchen counter with a block of butter and a bag of raisins, and I was taking each raisin and running it down the butter and putting it in my mouth. And my mum walked into the kitchen and was like, "What are you doing?" And she was quite, disturbed
fair enough.
that I was just sitting there smashing some butter and raisins. And, and I don't know how or why I got onto the kitchen counter with the butter and the raisins, but I did. And I sort of think about that, and I'm like, I must have gone and seeked out a bunch of different things before I found something that worked together. And when you think about it, butter and raisins are bloody lovely together. Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's something about having a palate and having an appetite to just want to try things. And
did your parents cook? Where did watching cooking come from? Because, there's that wonderful saying, you can't be what you can't see. Yep. And obviously you saw that somewhere.
Mum was a florist, so she did design really well. Yeah. And she was a good entertainer, so she'd have dinner parties and have people over. And I always liked that feeling of when she was going to have people over, because she'd be setting a table and she'd play music, and she, she did it well. So that's kind of my foray into hospitality, I guess. But she was a single mum, so she worked her butt off, and she was, super busy. So there wasn't a lot of emphasis on weeknight dinners. But there was when she would entertain, and that's the ones that I liked, because the weeknight dinners were kind of just, same old stuff.
Yeah. So what kind of stuff would you have?
Normally, it would pretty much, I joke with her about this, but it would pretty much be a few steamed vegetables.
Yeah.
And then a piece of fish or a piece of steak or whatever, and that would just be cooked pretty simply. So it was healthy. I laugh about it now because I'm like, Mum, you put all the vegetables in at the same time. You put the potatoes in with the peas. So the peas would be really overcooked and the potatoes would still be crunchy. But she was a very good baker, and she'd do that when she'd have people over or entertain. And I think I really enjoyed watching that process too.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing because obviously then you would have had to have started to cook yourself.
Yep.
And did you cook with her watching? Like, did you help her out or anything like that?
I did. Yeah, I enjoyed that process, measuring things and getting stuff out and tasting them in their raw form and then combining stuff. Both my grannies were good bakers as well. They couldn't be more different, my grannies. One was from Woodend, she's a country girl. Very, very simple. But she was a good, country cook. And my dad's mum, she was a bit fancy. She was English, and her house looked really pretty, and she had vintage cutlery everywhere. And so she was from Yorkshire originally. So she'd make this fudge that was from Yorkshire, and I'd do that with her. And when I'd go and visit my other granny, I'd make shortbread with her, which is, when I think about it, it's a pretty unusual thing for a little kid to want to be doing all the time.
It is.
With the women in his life.
But it is. And I think, again, it has to start somewhere. Right. I feel like you would know far more chefs than me, but I feel like something like that probably a lot of the time comes through childhood and what you're seeing the people around you and maybe respect doing, and you grow a love for that. I came from a household where my mum didn't cook,
right?
And I am like the worst cook, but I have other people around me who cook, so I leave it up to them and they love it.
So what did you do for dinner when she didn't cook? What would you have?
Well, she would, but it was very basic, right? Okay. So she would not cook, but it was just very basic kind of things, which is absolutely fine. And that's how we kind of grew up. So it was always wholesome and mostly healthy. But, when I think about other people in my life who grew up with, parents or a mother that was similar to you where they were watching the whole time, I kind of didn't have that. But my grandma did actually cook a lot. She is from Europe and came from Austria and kind of cooked that very heavy, goulashes and things delicious. Like that. Yeah, it was really delicious. That kind of, very much Eastern European way. So I thought that was really beautiful, and she'd make cakes and things like that. But that was the only window I had really into cooking.
Right. Right.
That I find that interesting.
It's fascinating. I often think about it because especially when you become a parent, I look at my kids.
Yeah.
I've got one kid that just can't put his guitar down. He's obsessed with it. He's in a band. And if you allow him to, he's just going to end up a musician. Yeah. That's just what's going to happen, which is beautiful. But also scary, do you want your kid to be a musician? I don't know. You want them to be a musician for sure. Do you want that to be the thing they do for their whole life and attach all their hopes and dreams to it and potentially get told no?
Yeah.
I don't know.
But they would have thought that about you too.
Oh, yeah. My dad did everything he could to get me to not be a chef.
Well, so tell us a bit about that, because it's one of those jobs where great, you're sitting here so unbelievably successful, but I would say that 90% of the people in your industry are not, right? That's the truth of it.
It's a tough business.
And so talk to us about your relationship with your dad and, what he thought of it all.
Well, he was in finance. So
well, there you go.
He was sort of pushing me to study hard.
Yes.
And I got through year 12 and got good grades and applied to university like everyone else does. And I got accepted into law and commerce and, good stuff. And then I told him I was going to be a chef and I applied to become an apprentice. And he was like, no, why? He's like, you can be a professional, have a great job, you earn lots of money. He's like, you don't want to be a cook. And he tried really hard. He even tried to tell me that people that made lots of money got pretty wives, and tradesmen, not so lucky with the girls. And I was like, mate. And we've spoken about it later in life, and he's like, I was just trying to tap into an 18-year-old's brain, and I thought maybe that could swing the pendulum. Thank God he didn't win that battle, because I ended up being an apprentice chef, and I probably only got 6 months into it, actually. I worked at the Southern Cross Hotel, if you can remember back that far.
Yeah.
You're younger than me, so you might not remember it. But it was this beautiful old hotel that it was at the end of its life.
Was it called the Savoy?
Well,
was that
I
different?
moved to the Savoy. The Southern Cross was...
I don't remember the Southern Cross.
Yeah, no, it was...
Savoy, I remember.
I reckon it might have been the first 5-star hotel in Melbourne.
Wow.
And when I got there, it was, about to fall over. It was about to close down. But it was still a 5-star hotel. And...
what were you doing there?
Oh, it was a miserable job because, you get put in the banquet kitchen and you just peel onions all day, or you get put in the... it's like you'd finish peeling and slicing a giant sack of onions. And then you'd walk over to your chef and be like, all right, that's done. And you'd be crying because the onions have made you cry and you stunk like an onion. And he's like, cool, go grab another bag and do it again. And you're just like, this is really what I signed up for,
Well, then wouldn't you think maybe I should have done that law commerce degree?
I did.
Seriously?
I enrolled in a part-time degree studying business. And I started, so I was like, I think he was right. But then I moved to the Savoy, and I fell in love with cooking, and I sort of dropped out.
What changed at the Savoy?
They had a good find. Well, the chef, actually. It was all about the guy who I was working for.
Who was that?
His name was Enifred Bart, and we're still mates. He sort of runs the culinary program at William Angus now. And he was really fabulous, like tough. And didn't take any shit from you, like he kept you on a pretty tight leash. But he taught me a lot and inspired me. And then working in an a la carte restaurant, there's a thing called the service, right? When you do a service, it's really exciting. And unless you do that, you either love that or hate it. Some people can't stand it.
What is it? Explain to us.
Well, it's how you serve people dinner, So you all line up you literally stand on a line, and then the orders start to come in.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, everyone wants to eat at the same time. And you get really busy, and you've got to try and keep up with each other because you're all reliant on one another. The guy cooking the fish and doing the sauce for the fish is relying on the person on the veg station putting up the veg at the same time as him. And then the person on the sauce station or the grill station is also putting up a dish that is built by multiple different sections. So if one person's running behind, everyone else's food dies on the pass. So you've got to be pretty precise in how you do it. And as the tickets start banking up, it gets kind of, you could say it gets scary, but it gets exciting if you like that.
Is there because I feel like through some kind of restaurant shows that I've seen, it works like this. There's a hierarchy within the kitchen. And within that, do you sometimes find bullying?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's a real hierarchy. I mean,
how does it work?
Well, it's built off a brigade system, which is kind of a French army system.
Really?
There's the head chef, and then his sous chef, which means the under chef. You're under the chef, and then a chef de partie is in charge of a section, and then he has demi-chefs or commis-chefs that sort of then work within his section. So one person's responsible for that section. So if something's wrong, the chef walks in and sees something's wrong, they would normally call out to the sous chef and be like, why does this look like this? And then he would go and speak to the chef de partie, and he would go and speak to his, his or her. So that's kind of how it works. And the bullying part, I mean, I worked for Marco Pierre White for 8 years. So
how's
Marco, he was notorious for being really tough. And he was ferocious in the way he cooked.
Like, what did he do?
Well, I mean, he was a perfectionist, and he cared greatly about what went on the plate and all of the process that went into it, So you could do some preparation, and if he wasn't happy with it, he'd just come and throw it in the garbage, and you'd have no prep left, so you'd have to start again. And you could say that's bullying, or maybe it's just holding someone to high standards. And I kind of loved it because I found that I understood that language pretty clearly. And did he ever upset you at all? The only time I ever got upset by Marco is when he didn't approve of something I did, because I wanted his approval, all the way through, even when because I started as a the lowest rank in his kitchen, and eventually was the head chef. But even as the head chef, if he came in for lunch and dined and then left and didn't speak to me afterwards, that would upset me because I'd be like, what was wrong with it? Like, what,
Would you ask him?
He wasn't the easiest guy to approach.
Yeah.
And you didn't see him a lot but at that point when I was the head chef of one of his restaurants. But he was the best boss I ever had, and I've got untold amounts of respect for him. And I begged him to take me as one of his cooks. So that's a thing that I think gets a little lost when we talk about it and talk about those kind of environments. We've almost moved to this place that those environments aren't allowed to exist anymore. And I think that's really sad because I wanted it. And I'm sure there's people that want it right now, but you can't offer it.
Do you think, talking about that in the movement of different working environments, should we say, that, say, the one that you're talking about, cooking and restaurants and that people might not be as good because they don't have that accountability or they're treated differently?
Has the world become too soft? That's what we're asking ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
You put it direct.
Well, I think it depends on what medium you're talking about, right? And I get it. The workplace has to be somewhere that everyone feels safe and supported, and that's how it should be. But if you chose something different, if I said gymnastics or ballet, right? My wife was into ballet, and she's told me stories about how tough it was for her learning to dance. But she really wanted to. She wanted to learn from the best, but they were strict and they were tough, and there wouldn't be a please and a thank you that followed everything, and there'd be she told me that one of her ballet teachers would stand behind her with like a cane, like a stick, and if her body wasn't moving in the way that her ballet teacher wanted her to, she'd tap her on that point of her body, like, you're not moving that correctly. That's a pretty extreme situation. But then you kind of go, well, yeah, but if you want to be a ballerina and you want to learn from the best, then that's what you've signed up for. But we're not allowed to do that in business anymore, So I don't know. It's a tricky thing to answer. I think you've got to create a safe space for your team, for sure. But I think you should also be able to let them excel and push them and train them if that's what they're looking for. But that's where it gets tricky. What
was it about Marco Pierre White that you love so much?
I think what he'd achieved. He was the youngest guy in the world to have 3 Michelin stars when I first met him. And he came from nothing. He came from a council estate in Leeds. He worked as a dishwasher when he first came into the business. He wasn't classically trained. And then he just worked for the best chefs in the world. And he built up this repertoire and this technique. And he was an absolute perfectionist. So when I first read his book, White Heat, I can remember reading it here from Melbourne and just being like, oh my God, I'm going to work for this guy. And when he wrote about this intense, crazy kitchen, and I literally packed a bag and moved to London with no money in my pocket, with the ambition of going to work for him. I'd never contacted the guy. Like, it was a pretty big leap of faith. And it just sort of worked out the way I'd imagined it, which is ridiculous, really, because it shouldn't have worked out like that, but it did. I just walked in the back door of his kitchen and got a job.
Is like what? You literally did that and just talked to him?
Yeah. I mean, it was
what
back
did you
before
say?
You would send someone an email too, right? Like, I probably should have sent a letter. I just walked in the kitchen and said, I'm here from Australia and I'm a chef and I'd love to work here. It wasn't even to Marco, it was to someone else. Because I walked in the back door and someone was like, what do you want? Thinking I was a supplier or someone, And then he said, oh, just wait there a minute. And I sort of stood there for a minute and Marco came around and was like, put an apron on. And that was it.
Really?
I literally had runners, a pair of jeans and a T-shirt on. And I worked all day and did service that night in the restaurant. And that was it. I was now one of the brigade.
When you reflect on your life, like knowing that everything that you have done and then thinking about that story, just telling it then, like, can you believe that?
It's nuts, isn't it?
It's nuts.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what your thoughts on this are. I believe in this, but you may not, that when you have a belief or a want and it's very strong and you apply yourself, like you went in there obviously already having worked in the area, being very passionate about cooking, like you knew what you wanted your dream to be and you did what you needed to do to get there, right?
Yeah.
And so you had a door open for you that someone may not have had they not applied themselves like you, and you took that leap of faith and randomly went to his restaurant, and he just happened to be there at that time, and he doesn't sound like the type of guy that would just talk to anyone. I mean, I don't know him, you do, but that sounds like quite a unbelievable thing. Like, what do you think about that?
I think if you have the right mindset, because if he wasn't there and I didn't get a job, what would have I done? I probably wouldn't have gone and got a job in a bar and started pulling pints. I probably would have gone to the next best restaurant in London and tried that, and then the next one. And then eventually someone's going to give you a chance. So I do think if you believe in it, it'll happen. And I am a big believer of manifesting stuff.
Yeah.
If you decide you're going to do something.
I'm massive into that, yeah.
It can just happen.
And I also believe that there are plenty of doors that life puts in front of us, and it's our choice if we decide to walk through them or not. And sometimes we need to take that leap of faith, not knowing, right, is where everything happens. When we know what's going to happen, it's pretty much the same as what's already happened. We don't step up to that next level.
Yeah.
So I feel like your story is a perfect example of that. Some people wouldn't do it because they'd be scared and they wouldn't want to fail. So it's easier to, again, stay in your comfort zone than to put yourself out there. But you did.
How did you get into this chair? How did you decide?
Because I did the same thing.
Right.
And when you're talking, I was actually thinking about my own life and how everything kind of came to be, but I took the leaps of faith along the way. I did the background, like I was a producer for many years and got into personal development work through my own journey, and then had this idea because I was already an employee of Fox and Triple M.
Right.
And I said, they just had started a podcast arm. And I said, I've got an idea for a podcast. And podcasting was at its infancy. And the head of podcasting said, that's a great idea. Give it a go. And the rest is history, right? Because it was good. The podcast did well. And I had a clear idea of what I wanted to do and achieve. But I took those leaps of faith, but I also, like you, put a lot of work in. Like I produced this podcast by myself for the first 3 years, working like other jobs at the same time, like producing all these other shows. And you start at the bottom, right?
Yeah.
And you work your way up. But like you, I learned so much. So I'm constantly, when I'm producing, watching people interview. I'm watching the way that people interact with one another, when people talk over. All these things bring you to that point. But if you go from A to, Z straight away, it's a bit too fast. Right. So it was like the slow progression made me good at what I do. And I don't think it's dissimilar to you.
I think a lot of people have good ideas.
Yeah.
Or ideas or dreams, right? But not a lot of people act on them, because you might not have ever had that conversation if you're a different person. But not only do you have to have the idea, you've also got to have the aptitude, which you obviously had, where you're like, I'm going to work 2 jobs if I have to. I'm going to start from the bottom. And the same for me, like I got on that plane to London with no money. I slept on someone's couch for the first 6 months of living there because I couldn't afford an apartment. So I think if you have the belief this is going to happen, then it can. Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. And tell us, what did you do after you worked for Marco Pierre-White?
Well, I was there for a long time, and it was a pretty sort of. We used to work from 9 a.m. till midnight.
Really?
Most days. Yeah.
How did you survive that?
You just get into the routine of doing it. Yeah, I'll probably
tired?
still do it now, if I'm being honest.
Really?
Yeah, I still work really long hours because I love what I do.
Yeah.
And, I live in the States, and all of the Aussies that I do business with and work with, they're all up late. Yeah. So then I get home from work and my phone keeps ringing and I keep getting scheduling calls in the middle of the night. And so I don't know. I think maybe it's just something I like doing. It's funny. I said to someone once, I'm going to slow down And my mum burst out laughing. I was like, what? And she said, you're never going to slow down. She said, when you were 18, you were playing football 4 times a week. You were working as a chef. You were going to university part-time. You've never not worked the way you work. And I was like, she's actually kind of right. And as soon as I find some space, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll start a new business. So I'm not sure. Maybe there's a little ADHD in there.
Tell me, though, how many hours a night would you sleep?
I probably get 7, 6 and a half.
So that's all right.
Not too bad.
Yeah. That's all right. It's like, it's not like you're getting 3 hours of sleep a night and then, being in, when you're back in the restaurant days, when you're working very much in the kitchen, because that would be a little bit full on.
Yeah. But sorry, so after Marco, I guess I started working a bit in the media. Someone published a book called London on a Plate, and it was sort of a snapshot of 20 or so restaurants, a few dishes from them, and a little bio on the chef. And they included the restaurant that I was the chef at in that book. And I think from that I started doing we did a bit of a press junket with that book, and I did a couple of morning spots on TV, and then I got asked back to do that. So it just sort of naturally happened that I was doing a couple of things on TV over there. And then I got asked I did a morning spot that somebody saw and then asked me to do this show called Surfing the Menu with Ben O'Donoghue, another Aussie who was living in London, on the ABC. And I mean, the concept of the show was 2 blokes travel around the country and go and meet food producers and set up on a beach at some point and cook with the ingredients they got and have a surf. And I was a crap surfer. Well, I couldn't really surf at all. But it sounded too good.
Yeah, you're like, I'll learn to surf.
I'm like, oh, I can surf.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I'll
figure that out somehow.
Yeah.
So I did that show, and I just took a vacation to go and do it. I didn't tell Marco that I was going to go and do it because celebrity chefs weren't aspirational for real chefs. We actually didn't even really want to associate with them, if I'm being totally honest.
Who was the big ones at that time?
Well, when I started cooking, there weren't any. But once I was sort of working for Marco, Jamie Oliver was
I was going to say Jamie Oliver, I feel like was one of the first ones.
Yeah. Ainsley Harriott at that time.
God, I remember him.
Yep. Anthony Worrell Thompson. So anyway, there's a handful of them. And so anyway, I went and did that show, and then they asked me to do a second season. So I went to Marco and said, look, I need to take another extended period of time off. And he said, what did you do the first time? You took 8 weeks off, because it was 8 weeks. And I said, I was back in Australia. And he said, doing what? And I thought, oh my God, he knows. And I couldn't lie to him. So I was like, well, I did a TV show. And he said, how much did they pay? And I told him, and he said, well, then you'd be an idiot not to do it again, wouldn't you? And I said, not that it was a lot of money, but it was more than I was making working in a restaurant.
How old were you?
25.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
what did he say?
He said, no, you should go and do it, but it's time for you to leave.
Leave altogether?
Yeah.
Oh,
and I was kind of like, that's not what I wanted, So I was a little torn to go back and do that second season.
Why do you think he said that?
I think he just thought that, it kind of happens in our business, actually, where you have someone, they work, and then you just know that they're getting to the end of their time with you. It's time for them to go do something on their own, or see something a bit different. I've done it for 8 years, and that's a long time in our business. Was
that sad?
It was sort of freedom as well, like I was a little bit ready. It's true. And I think the interesting thing about doing Surfing the Menu was I only knew ingredients because they came in a box in the back door of the restaurant. Like, I didn't really know where anything came from. I wasn't close to the food industry at all. And then when I did that show, I was meeting a mango grower and then on a boat talking about how mussels grow in the ocean. And you learn a lot about ingredients when you get out into the field and meet the farmers. And it started to really influence what I wanted to do in a kitchen. So when I got back to London, I went and saw Terence Conran, who I'd got to know, and went and took over one of his restaurants, Bluebird, down in Chelsea. So yeah, it was sort of the beginning of something new for me, where I got to actually, because when you work for someone like Marco, as much as he gave me freedom to create dishes, it was still his restaurant.
Yeah, of course.
So you still work within his confines and parameters,
And I wonder, are you and him still friends?
We are. Yeah. We don't see each other.
Where's he now?
He's back in the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. He has a beautiful country house up in Oxford, or not far out of Bath.
There must be something that, because I know I have it with people that really influence what I do in a positive way, where you just have this like heartfelt love towards them.
Right.
And because they kind of help really change the trajectory of your life a bit.
Right.
Do you have that with him?
I do. Yeah. And it's interesting. I've never said it to him.
Oh, you should.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been thinking about him more and more, and maybe going and seeing him, and yeah, it's a fascinating relationship because he was my boss. There was there wasn't a friendship.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He was my boss, and I worked for him, and if I see him tomorrow, I'd still call him boss. I wouldn't call him Marco. Yeah, because that's just what I always called him. So yeah, it's an interesting relationship, but a fascinating guy. Very, very interesting, quite eccentric.
Didn't you come in once like wearing just boots or something like that after catching fish or something like that?
He came. I was working at the Mirabelle.
Yeah.
And he was a big hunter. He would go, he would shoot pigeons and pheasants and grouse and red-legged partridge and you name it. And then he would bring the birds back to the restaurant.
Wow.
And he would literally walk through the dining room in his waders with handfuls of braces of birds, game birds. And that one day, he came into the kitchen and he dropped them all on the pass. And it was the middle of service. He was quite eccentric. He was smoking a cigar. And then he saw we had roast beef on the menu. It was Sunday lunch. And he started slicing himself some roast beef. And then he must have liked how it tasted. So he walked off into his office and he came back. He took his waders off. He came back in his long johns in the kitchen and continued to snack on the roast beef. And I was looking at it thinking, I'm going to run out if you keep eating it.
I feel like so English.
It's very English. Yeah.
Long johns.
Long johns. Very eccentric. But that was Marco for you. You never know what to expect. Yeah. And
why is he like that?
I don't know. Yeah, I think he still probably is. Like he had a very obsessive personality. So when he started to hunt, he would end up hunting every day of the season. And when he was doing food, he was, like when he was cooking in his restaurants, he was, he would work very, very hard.
And then tell me, you met Oprah. That came about, and that obviously, again, I feel like took you to another level of notoriety. How did that come about?
I got a phone call, and she was doing like a sandwich showdown, and she wanted to invite a couple of chefs on to. So I think I was just on a list of people that one of her producers probably looked at and thought, well, he'll do. So it was me and a couple of other chefs that went on to this. So it was just an episode of her show. But I got to know her and I sort of chatted to her. She's very down to earth. She wandered around to everyone's dressing room before the show and she started her heels in her hand, just walking around saying, "Oh, hey, are you going to be on?" And I don't know. I don't know that I was so. When you see people around Oprah, because she's so famous, I think people get quite strange around her.
I've heard that through a friend of mine who spent quite a bit of time with her recently.
Right.
They treat her like she's different to everyone else.
It's a bit like meeting the Queen or the Pope or someone, out of this world. So, but maybe I didn't. Maybe I was just chatting to her. You know? So she we got along really well. So she had me back on her show a few times, and when she was coming to Australia, she called me and said, "Would you do an Aussie barbecue for me?" So, we became friends. She had a private chef named Art Smith who I ended up being quite good mates with. She's a fabulous human being. She really, she has an extraordinary way about her. She's extremely down to earth. My favourite story that I could tell about Oprah is we spent 3 days getting ready for this incredible barbecue for her on Whitehaven Beach. You can imagine there's no running water, there's no bathrooms. You've got to bring everything and take everything. So you can't get there before sunrise and you've got to be off before sunset. So we had this like epic experience of trying to create this magical barbecue. We built an ice out of giant ice blocks, and we had all these models coming out of the ocean with all this. It was ridiculous, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was this big production, and she flew in by chopper, and all of her fans from America had been flown out.
It was like an Aussie
attend it.
special or something,
Yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah, I vaguely remember this.
And we got on the boat at the end of it and went back to the hotel. And Lindsay, my wife, which was my girlfriend at the time, was sitting with her, and she said, "So where are you going next?" And she said, "Oh, we're going to Uluru." And Lindsay's like, "Oh, what are you going to wear?" And then the two of them sat there eating potato chips and spoke about their outfits for the entire boat ride home. And it was just like watching two girls sit around and chat about, and Lindsay was like, "Oh, it's going to be so hot. You think about how you're going to sweat." And, and it was just, and that's my favorite moment of her. She's just so down to earth, and she'll just sit around and chat to whoever it is about whatever makes sense,
Don't you think, though, and I've come to know this over the time that I've been in entertainment, which has been, over 13 years now, where you meet people from all walks of life, right? Where fame is huge, they're very wealthy, have amazing lives. We're all just people. Right? And you said it before. I think when you start to treat someone differently because they're well-known or wealthy, then it's that you're putting them above where you are. And if you treat someone who doesn't have that as less than, then that also is showing something that's not right. Because, from my work as a mindset coach to a lot of very wealthy, executives of big companies, I can tell you that we all have the same problems.
Right.
And it doesn't matter. And I wonder if you've come across a similar thing. People just want to be seen and heard, really.
Yep. Absolutely. I think your mindset's everything, isn't it? I talk to my little guy about it because he gets really anxious before he plays soccer. He's a good soccer player, and he gets really anxious. And I'm like, mate, it's all about your mind. And we spoke for a long period of time because there's no sport more powerful than this in the world than soccer, because you always win when you're at home, and you find it very difficult to win when you're traveling. And I was explaining that to him, and I'm like, there's no difference. It's just a pitch. The only thing is the noise of the crowd and how you feel, and it's all what's in between your heads. Like you've got to have that mindset of a champion, and if you think you're going to do it, you will. And I do think that mindset's really interesting. But sorry, I'm answering a totally different question.
No, but I find that interesting.
But, and for me, I think doesn't matter who you meet, if you meet them and you're interested in them and you talk to them like a normal person, they'll be interested as well.
100%. That's what I've found.
Yeah.
Like you say about Oprah,
right?
You just talk to her normally, which is very funny because this friend of mine that spent time with her, he said the exact same thing. He said, I just talked to her like a normal person and she loved me.
Yeah.
Because everyone around her is fussing so much.
Right.
And I have felt the same in my industry. When you're not doting over someone, even if you're a massive fan of theirs, you pull it back and you're just normal, like you would be talking to a friend. They're going to talk to you exactly the same and probably really connect with you on that level.
Yeah.
It's something that, I think it's the human nature. No one wants someone who's doting on them so much. It kind of makes you feel weird.
Especially someone you don't know.
Yeah.
It's okay if your wife tells you.
That's so true. Your partner tells you you look great or whatever, but when it's strangers, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you found that?
I guess so. I suppose. I'm a cook. What we do for a living is we cook other people's dinner.
Yeah.
It's a very humble trade.
Yeah.
And I call it a trade because it's not even really a profession. It's a trade. And no matter how fancy my life can get, and it has at certain points, I still end up having to do the dishes because, that's what working in a restaurant is. That's what cooking someone dinner is. And I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. I pride myself in cleaning my own stove at the end of a service. I don't know. I guess I'm pretty down to earth.
When it comes to, you mentioned produce before and how you kind of moved into knowing more about that when you worked on the TV show. And obviously that's a big part of what you do now. You know a lot about that kind of stuff. How have you found the way that produce is treated now? You know, like there's a lot more pesticides than ever before and things like that. I'd love to know what your thoughts as a chef and cook and restaurateur are on that.
Oh, don't get me started. I mean, we'd need to book another whole session
because
the food business is massive, right? And I think the more you know about how food's produced, the scarier it gets, you know. And I think in some ways it's my favorite job is working with Coles. And you probably think that's a weird thing for me to say because I have like these fancy restaurants and whatever, but I get to sit down with a giant business that kind of dictates the way a country eats.
Of course.
And I get to give real input. So,
that's great.
I started off as their ambassador, but I'm actually their fresh food advisor. So
really,
I sit down with them and talk about how things should be produced. And, you know, I think that's because I've seen a lot, you know, and I have a butcher shop. So I've been to all sorts of farms all over the world and looked at how cattle's produced. And you would only want to eat some of the cattle that's produced in the world. You wouldn't want to eat it all. And
on that, I've had Peter Singer on this podcast before. I actually travelled with him when he was on tour, interviewing him on stage. You know him? He's like the man of veganism and wrote the books that kind of changed the world on that. And so I learnt a lot about that industry and it made me think a lot too. And then I kind of by mistake, we're in Bali and this place that we were staying, the guy's like, let me show you our chicken farm. And we're, you know, naively like, sure, we'd love to come and see it. And I nearly died because there are just thousands of chickens in this coop, you know, just not much room to move and stuff. And it makes me think a lot about the ethics around factory farming and what people are putting into themselves when they're eating chicken or meat from these places. And I wonder what you do in regards to that.
Look, I think the truth is we used to spend a bigger portion of our household income on food than we do now, right? Which almost sounds counterintuitive because I'm talking generations ago, a big portion of what we spent was on food. And now we spend a big portion of our food, of our income on lots of things. But where I'm going with this is I actually think our food is too cheap. I think that food should be really precious. And the ingredients, again, if you want to use all sorts of fertilizers and GMOs and pesticides and stuff that you and I might think downgrades the ingredients, then you should have the opportunity to do that. I don't disagree. But you should also have the opportunity to not do it and eat organically and eat, you know, food that's just been grown naturally. But that's harder and harder to figure out, you know what I mean? And I think that food is really important. But we spend a lot of money on tech. Think about how much money each household spends on tech, how many iPads and iPhones and, you know, stuff that's in your home. How many screens do we have? Like our parents didn't have 6 televisions. They had 1, maybe, you know, and their parents might not have even had one. So anyway, I think that food, no matter what it is, whether it's vegetables, whether it's seafood, whether it's meat, it should be treated really carefully, you know. And look, as far as the world goes, Australia is still a really great place to eat natural food, you know. And we do have a good attitude towards having pretty clean decks in processed foods compared with other places in the world.
What does that mean?
Well, you know, you can put a bunch of garbage in processed food.
Yeah.
You know, and if you read the ingredients on a packet, if you don't understand what that is, you've got to ask yourself.
America's having a bit of an overhaul of that kind of stuff now.
Yeah. They're a long way behind us. You know, if you walk into the average grocery store in America and see what's in their food, it's not the same quality as Australia.
It's interesting, when I was there last year, a friend of mine was saying, I was in New York, and these women were saying they're so worried about what they give their kids because they look at the ingredients, and to your point, they don't understand half of what's there, and they know there are these food dyes and things that we wouldn't be allowed here in Australia,
Right.
yet they are allowed them there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty scary.
It is.
Like banned in some countries, but okay there.
Right. Right. It's crazy.
Like,
yeah.
You know, and they have to be so careful about what they give. And I wonder, like going back to what we were talking about with your restaurants, are you careful about where they source meats and things like that from?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
think
the
it's a
quality
huge
of
part
the
your
meat is much
responsibility.
better when the animal has been killed in a humane way and not stressed out and things like that.
Well, stress is a horrible thing to have in a herd of cattle. It's something that you absolutely have to avoid. But if you factory farm, then it's, of course, that animal is stressed if they're living their whole life on a concrete floor in an overcrowded environment, eating grain. And not that eating grain is the worst thing in the world, and not that, there's lots of different ways to farm and lots of different attitudes towards it. But the truth is that what you pay for is what you get. Like, that's kind of the truth of the food business.
It's true.
Because going back to your chicken example, if that guy took half the chickens out of that barn, then that would double the price of his chicken production, because he's only producing half the amount.
Yeah.
So you're prepared to pay twice as much to have half as many in? That's the question.
And I wonder if you look at the food that we have today, as far as, I know that you made a comment about, I think it was like this new McDonald's Big Mac, or not Big Mac, it was some sort of hamburger they had.
Right.
Which made so much sense to me. I mean, it seemed like a heart attack waiting to happen. I mean, I just, in my mind, can't understand when people would even give their, eat that stuff. I mean, I know people will probably feel like, that's a weird thing to say, but even when it comes to hamburgers, when you and I were young, that was the only place to go for a hamburger. Right. Now there are millions of beautiful places that have, great meat and buns that aren't full of sugar and things like that. They have options. We didn't have options back then. So what do you think about kind of the fast food world these days?
Look, it's sad, but I think the truth is it's become a bit of a socioeconomic question, right? Because especially when you live in the States, fast food is really targeted at people that don't have the means to spend a lot of money on their dinner. And you can go to a fast food joint and eat really inexpensively because it's garbage. The food's not good. The nutritional value is low. The sugar is too high. The sodium is too high. The fat is too high. It all tastes good, right? That's why people go there, and it's cheap. So if it tastes good and it's cheap, it ticks two boxes that are important to you. So they get a lot of people over the line, and it's a bummer because I think the education might play as well. And I don't want to sound like a snob because everyone deserves to eat and everyone deserves to eat however they want. But I do worry about the food world and how far down the road it's gone. It's all very well and good to say you should eat organically because let's go back to the chicken example.
Yeah.
You can eat a battery hen. You can eat a free-range bird. You can eat an RSPCA-approved free-range bird. You can eat an organic free-range bird. There's lots of different choices, right? Pasture raised. So when you look at it, you're like, all right, well, there's 6 tiers to a chicken maybe. You can go up, but the most expensive one is really expensive for a lot of people. And it goes back to what I'm talking about of how much of our household income we spend on food. Do we have that balance right? I don't know, and it's different for everybody. Some people might not really care. Some people choose to smoke cigarettes. That's all right. If you want to smoke a cigarette, smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
I don't want to smoke one. I don't want kids smoking one. I don't even want to be around someone when they're smoking one. But I can't tell someone that chooses to do that, you're an idiot, you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of the same with food,
Absolutely. Now they make it $50, I think, to buy a pack of
That's right.
cigarettes in Australia. So you have to be rich to do that anyway.
We should put a junk food tax on
Seriously.
fast food joints.
I know. It's a tricky thing. Really it is.
Yeah.
I wonder, you have obviously spent a lot of time on MasterChef, which is a very popular show around the world, but in Australia as well. How is that?
It's a lot of fun. It's a very positive show, and I love that about it.
Yeah.
Everyone's sort of there to, give encouragement and to teach and to guide. And it's really changed food, especially in Australia. And I think the best version of MasterChef is the Aussie one.
Is it?
For sure.
Have you been on the others as well?
Yeah.
And they weren't as good?
They're just different. They're shot faster. The Australian one takes forever for that season to go through. We strip it through the week. Is it on 4 or 5 times a week? Or maybe 6. But anyway, it's a long period of time that those contestants are absorbing information from these great chefs that come on and teach them stuff and do these masterclasses. You know, when you go work in the restaurant business, you might just peel potatoes for the first 3 months. So you're not learning the skill as quickly. And I do think it's sort of really changed. It's changed Australian food for sure. I mean, we never used to talk about plating up.
No, I reckon it has as well.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Tell me, you got a bit of backlash because people said that you were a bit harsh on that show. I personally don't. I've watched a few seasons, but not for a while.
Yeah.
Why did they say that?
I think we did a restaurant challenge.
Ah.
And I might have clicked into being in my restaurant. Forgot that the cameras were there. But, you know, it goes back to that mentoring thing, right? There's different ways to mentor people. Sometimes you got to push people. And I really cared about the contestants that were there that day. And I knew that if I didn't help them produce good food, one of them was going to go home. So I was determined to try and push them over the line. So maybe I got a bit salty.
Do the producers of that show, because it is reality TV, do they tell you, do they give you a persona to be, or you can do whatever you want?
No, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, they might bring you back because you're a certain type of person. I don't know. But no one gives you any direction.
Okay. Yeah, because sometimes you don't know, when you feel like people have taken like certain roles within a show. And so I've always wondered if something's happening behind the scenes, but that's really interesting to know.
Yeah.
And tell me, were you friends with Jock?
Yes.
Was that a big surprise to you when he passed away?
It was. Yeah, it was. It really was. He's a beautiful man, like a really, really sweet guy. And it was really unexpected. The conversation I had with him before the last time I saw him, he was actually talking about moving to Italy, and he was sort of thinking that maybe he could have this life where they lived in Italy, and he came back here to do MasterChef and went again. And I can remember leaving and thinking about that and being like, God, wouldn't that be incredible if he could figure that out? And I wondered why he wanted to do that, because he went from being a great restaurant chef, one of Australia's best, and then he decided to do MasterChef. And it's a very different lifestyle, You're not in your restaurant, you're on a set with a bunch of people, and there's a lot of attention around it. And I wondered whether he was enjoying that element of it or not. But he was a beautiful man, really sweet guy.
Mm. And do you find that just in the restaurant, cooking kind of industry, because it's very high pressure, not that's obviously different, he was working on a show, that mental health is a big thing. People suffer with not so great mental health that are in that industry. Because I have found or heard of it that it is tough, like working the long hours, the culture can be hard.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a tough business. Absolutely. It's one of those businesses that even as you run a business like that, it's hard to make money out of. So it's hard to really reward your team the way you think they deserve to be rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's draining, like you've even a dishwasher, for instance. You've got someone that stands in a dish pit all night and is up to their elbows in soap suds from the second they get to work until the second the restaurant's clean, the end of the night. And, the waiters literally flick the plates across the thing at them, and the chefs, they have to run and grab a bus tub full of dirty pots and bring them back and replace. If they don't get them back to the kitchen in time, then you don't have pans to cook in.
Yeah.
So then the chefs are calling, pans, I need pans. And the poor guy back there scrubbing dishes. And you want to really reward someone for doing that for you. But it's tough when you can't. You know, you can only pay them what you can afford to pay them, which isn't a ton of money. So I think there's lots of challenges, and then the hours are long, and it can be a little dark. It can be super exciting too. You know, like the restaurant business is it's a bit of a roller coaster. You know, it can be. I don't feel like it is work. I would choose to go and do it even if I wasn't getting paid. You know, that's how much I enjoy it. If I go and visit a friend, I'll go and do a night with them in their restaurant.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, who have you done that with recently?
Oh, mates in England. I was just over there, and I went and spent time with my old mate Shane, who has a fabulous restaurant. I've done that lots of times. Yeah.
Will you cook dinner for your family?
Oh, yeah. Of course.
You just you don't get sick of it?
No, I love it.
Wow.
I don't like having to do it in a rush.
Yeah.
I don't like having to turn it on in an hour, and I like to be able to do it properly.
What's your favourite meal to cook? It's a question would have been asked 5,000 times.
You know what? Depends who I'm cooking for.
Yeah, your family.
Well, my kids, my oldest boy eats absolutely anything.
Yeah, how good is that?
Oh, it's amazing. He's come to Maud and sat up at the counter and eaten
Really?
15 courses of some of the weirdest stuff I've served anyone.
Yeah.
And he's like, Dad, this was crazy, like the crunch and the this and the that. And he's really into
How
it.
old is he?
13.
Oh, my God.
And my 10-year-old is like an absolute redneck who, if it's not white or fried, he wants nothing
That's
to do with it.
my son who's 12.
Is it?
Yeah.
So I had it all figured out. I thought that, I was a genius and I could write a book on. I literally thought I might write a book on. I even came up with, I called it Develop the Palate. And I started thinking it through. And then along came Emerson and smashed my theory. So I cook, pretty simply for them. They love pasta. One of Lindsay's favourite things is if I slow cook meat, I do it with lamb a lot, lamb shoulder. I'll braise a lamb shoulder and then I'll sort of pull that with the juices that it's cooked in and just toss it with some homemade pappardelle, and that's a pretty fan favourite at my house.
I know you're obviously working, to time and things like that when you're cooking, not for your family but in a restaurant. But there is also there's the noise of the restaurant, but it's also yourself, right? So I just am thinking this now whilst you're talking about cooking that. There must be an element of mindfulness that goes on. We talked about mindset briefly, because otherwise your thoughts could overtake you.
Yeah.
Have you learnt to kind of be razor sharp?
Yeah.
Or do you let your thoughts kind of go?
Depends. I do both. So to me, the kitchen's my place.
Yeah.
Right? I spoke about my son before. If he's angry, he'll go and pick up his guitar and he'll start playing something. If he's sad, he'll go and pick up his guitar and he'll start playing something. And if he's joyful, he'll also go and pick up his guitar and start playing something. That's my kitchen. So on a Sunday morning when I'm in a brilliant mood, I'll come downstairs and I'll play classical music and I'll fart around in the kitchen and I'll just have a fantastic time. That's beautiful. Getting ready for service an hour before when no one's ready, I turn on loud rock and roll music and I push, and I love it. I love that thrill of, am I going to get it together in time? So I just love being in there. So it depends. Sometimes I think that creative process in a kitchen when you're developing a menu, that's super fun because you just start with an idea and you keep changing it. You see, and you want to meander, I beg your pardon, with your thoughts, so you can, and you end up doing something totally different than where you started. And I love that, because you start thinking about something and you're like, oh, that would work well with it, and then the thing that you thought would work well with that actually becomes the center of the dish because you're like, that's way better. Forget about the other thing. I love doing that.
Do you do meditation or anything like that?
No.
Do you have any kind of...
I'd love to know how, but my wife tells me I need to. And I've tried a couple of times, but I can't sit still.
How do you keep your mental health in check?
I'm not sure. I've never really struggled with it at all.
Yeah.
If you don't suffer from anxiety, it's hard to understand what that feels like. And I have friends and people in my world that really do struggle with anxiety. And I've tried to imagine how it would feel, but I don't know that I've ever really felt it.
Yeah. You're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, I guess so. And,
You've never been overwhelmed in the industry that you're in with work and stuff like that?
I box. I work out in a boxing gym. And I find punching something is a really beautiful release of whatever it is. You can literally leave a boxing gym and just have nothing left, and you walk out and you're like, and maybe because maybe that's my meditation.
No, it sounds absolutely like it would be. Are you, have you worked closely with Gordon Ramsay?
We knew each other pretty well in London.
Yeah.
And he worked for Marco. But he was a bit before me. So he was going and opening the Aubergine when I started to work for Marco. But he was still good mates with him. So he would still come back to the restaurant a lot and sit around in the office with Marco and talk. And yeah, we know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
We don't see each other very often, but yeah.
Is he a nice guy?
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know him well enough to give you an honest perspective. But yeah, from what I know of him, he's a nice guy.
I wonder, what's some of the best advice that you have ever been given?
I have a Greek business partner, Harry Parenthood, and he's very funny. And he has all these wonderful sayings from his father, who came over here as a candle maker to Australia and built this fabulous homewares business. And we now make kitchenware together, Harry and I. And he always says, you've got to be on the streets. And what it means is, if you're just doing your work, you're just doing your work. And it always stays the same. You have to be out. You have to be meeting people.
Yes.
You have to be coming up with ideas. You have to give yourself space to think of stuff and then go out and action it. And every time I go to a party, and I'm not a super social, it's not that I'm antisocial. I love going out, but I'm busy, so I don't do it often. But every time I do, I normally meet someone, and then that leads to something, and then something else happens. And I always remember Harry's saying, "If you've got to be on the streets."
It's a very good saying.
It is. Yeah.
What's your favourite restaurant in Australia?
He also says,
"Where is that?"
My favourite restaurant in Australia is Attica.
Yeah.
Ben Shuri.
And that's a Melbourne. I was going to say, what's your favourite Melbourne restaurant? But that is Melbourne.
Yeah. Look, he's a genius in the way he approaches Australian food. He's not even an Aussie. He's a Kiwi.
Is he?
Yeah. But he, I think he really respects First Nations people. He really understands and has grown to know Indigenous ingredients. And his sense of, I think the whole ethos of his restaurant is brilliant. And he's like, I just don't want you to be able to ever have this food anywhere else. I want it to be distinctly Australian. And he cooks with all of our wild ingredients, and he's a really hard worker. He's a very humble dude. He'll wander up the beach and forage different seaweed.
Really?
Yeah, he's very cool. Very, very cool.
Best restaurant in the world?
Oh my God. I'm going to give you a different answer to the last time I answered this question, because I can never make my mind up. Grant Atchett's has a restaurant called Alinea in Chicago. And I think it's magical. You know, he sort of plays with that molecular gastronomy, but he's very, very good at it. And he's very crazy in the way he thinks. And his food just tastes so good.
Do you think that Australia's cafe culture is one of the best? Or we just like to say so?
No, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
There's something about Australian breakfast, don't you think, that is pretty amazing?
For sure.
Why do you think that?
And we have crap bacon here. That's the problem with our breakfast. But apart from the crap bacon,
we've got good avocado.
we have good everything else.
Good bread as well.
We've just started. You can buy, they call it British bacon.
Yeah.
And that's good. But the rest is all cooked and it drives me crazy. But apart from the bacon, and I won't get started, on the back end. Oh, yeah, we have an incredible cafe culture and we make beautiful coffee and we take real pride in it.
I love that as well.
I fly coffee in from Melbourne to sell
Where?
in my
Which
restaurants.
one?
St. Ali.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. It's around the corner.
Yeah.
I wonder, what is something that you wish for yourself?
I don't know. Something I wish for myself. Oh, isn't that funny? I have no idea how to answer that.
So I'll give you some
I'm
answers
happy.
that people have said in the past, like sometimes like more peace, presence, more time with their family, things like that.
I think I've got all that. You know, like I think I've got a good balance. It's interesting. I always wanted to. The reason I decided to open a restaurant was because I wanted my kids to see me work hard. And they probably would have anyway. But at the time, I didn't have a restaurant and I was doing TV shows and writing books. And it's kind of a job, you know, but it's also, I don't know, it's not a job in the way I knew a job was. And I didn't want them to think, oh, Dad was kind of lucky and he got a TV show. And, so I wanted them to see me grind. So I think that there's a healthy balance there of spending time. I'm about to spend 6 weeks with them. We're going to go to Europe and have a fabulous time. But I don't mind that they see that I come home late. I think that's kind of good.
I heard this mindset coach once say, when someone asked him, what is the worst thing that you can do to your kids? And he said, not follow your dream.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
And I often think that even about myself when, you know, as a mother, which you can sometimes get even more slack for because it's always the men, you know, in the old school that are doing the jobs and it's okay for them to come home late or not be there. You know, I travel a lot for what I do and there is a guilt that comes with that.
Yeah.
But I think about what he said and I think about how I'm just following my dreams and they see that and there's something that makes them even more alive knowing that their mum is doing that and giving back to people and I'm a better person for it, as I'm sure you are, which makes me better around them.
Yeah. More time on the beach. I love the beach.
Yeah.
There's my answer. I want to sit on the beach.
And our final question, what is a life of greatness to you?
A life of greatness is one that you get to give back. It's one that you get to receive, but it's mainly one that you get to look after other people. Because I think, you know, I've had so many fabulous opportunities in my life, but the ones that I'm proudest of, I work with a charity in the US and we help people when they come out of jail get a job because their life kind of sucks when they're in jail, of course. And then when it comes out, it's a really scary time because they know they can't get a job easily. They know all the people that they know got them in jail in the first place. And their outlook is pretty it's different for everyone, but we've been lucky enough to hire some of those people in our restaurants.
Really?
Yeah, I've had 40 chrysalis employees, and one of them is one of my best friends. He's now runs my farm. I've got a farm in LA, and he's been with me for 13 years, and he's champion of a bloke. And I've watched him totally change his life through someone giving him an opportunity. So I'm much prouder and fonder of that relationship than any of my other work relationships. I think doing something for someone else is always cool.
I want to thank you, Curtis, for all the work that you have done and thank you so much for this conversation today.
Thanks so much. This was lots of fun. You're very good at what you do.
Oh, thank you.
You are.